Peter, one thing your book, I think, does a fantastic job at is to lighten the usual iconic perspective of Joy Division as a dark, introspective band into just the guys in the band, including Ian, doing dirty jokes, doing, just...
I was very aware of the mythical status of Joy Division. And I think the thing is that sometimes it doesn't quite ring true when I read it. And what I wanted to do, I suppose, was show that we were human and we were just, I suppose, what you'd say in inverted commas, normal. Because the thing is that punk to me was about inspiration. It was about inspiring people to do something that they thought they couldn't do. And Johnny Rotten and the Sex Pistols gave me the impetus to change my life. And I felt that the mythicizing of Joy Division was opposite to what those ideals were that we started with. And that was the reason why I wanted to give all of us a chance to show our human sides, that we were normal, young, mischievous boys. And the strange thing is that I don't underestimate the power that the chemistry between us had to create the music that we did. That is exemplary music. And it came to us very young as well, so the chemistry between us was very strong. I don't underestimate that. But basically, as soon as we stopped writing or we stopped playing, we were very normal people.
During all these years, was it sometimes almost scary how seriously people take the band?
Well, I had a very different look on the group because when Ian died and we formed New Order, we literally did pack it away in a box and more or less forgot all about it. And it's a very odd thing now. When I was in New Order, it seemed like the correct thing to do. When New Order split in 2006 and you were on the outside looking in, it struck me as odd that we never celebrated anything to do with Joy Division. It really did. And it was 30 years of Ian's life, as I like to call it, in 2010, which was the reason why I started celebrating the music, because it had been so ignored. And people never stopped mentioning it as an influence, as a wonderful thing. And it was odd being in New Order and looking at it, because it was like seeing a shadow of your former self or something, someone that you didn't actually quite recognise. But as I said, when New Order finished, I started to look at it in a completely different way. And it was odd, yeah. I mean, the myth surrounding Ian in particular, that live fast, die young thing, was odd. And yeah, I mean, it was a great compliment to see how many people mention your music as an inspiration. And strangely enough, whenever you listen to the music, it sounds as fantastic today as it did when we did it in 1977, 78, 79. So yeah, I mean, it was an odd thing to be presented with. And when I actually came to do the book, to actually throw yourself right into the middle of that period again and relive all those memories, actually made me feel quite good. It made me feel very proud of what we achieved. Not only me, Bernard, Stephen and Ian. What we achieved together was fantastic and seems to get more popular.
Doing the book in a so detailed way, including, dates and everything, make you, in a way, be there again. Was there at any time a kind of longing in the back of your head for the times where there were no money involved? It was just pure energy music, and
the times when you were friendly with the other members of the band would be
as
nice.
Well.
Yes, course, yeah, that would be nice. I mean, it's an odd position to be in. The legal fracas that I'm having, still seeking a legal remedy to the others' use of the name New Order, is still very present and very pertinent in my life, which doesn't make things easy, shall we say. But remembering those days when everything was much simpler, much more straightforward, and you were doing it simply for love of being together and the love of music. It really was about escape, escaping from that 9-to-5 drudgery, escaping from the dullness of Manchester, going into another world that you never envisaged that you'd be in. You know, when I used to go and see groups like Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple, bands like that, I never looked at them and thought, oh, I could do that. I could be a bass player in a band. The strangest thing was at the age of 20 to see the Sex Pistols and then think that, and then go on to be in two internationally renowned bands is amazing, you know. And for me and Bernard to start together with that thought, and then for him to be such a fantastic guitarist, a fantastic vocalist, you know, and get two groups that change the world of music is incredible luck. It does make me wonder what would have happened if we hadn't have gone on that night, you know, what you'd be doing. And it does make you realise how fickle and how complicated life is, because it could have changed. Your destiny could have changed so easily. But I did enjoy it. I enjoyed writing about what was a very successful time for us, a very simple time and a very enjoyable time. You know, the only thing that we were having to come to terms with was Ian's illness, which did make us grow up, you know, rather than quicker than we should have done maybe. But it was just something you did, you know, because you loved the guy. The guy was fantastic. He was a lovely bloke, and he was great to work with. You know, he was such a genius with his words and with the way that he moulded the music. We played the music and he showed us. He was like a band leader, you know, and that was what was so traumatic when we got to New Order and he'd gone. You had no leader, no conductor, and it made life very difficult. And I think it took us a long time to get over that in New Order. And I think in some ways we never did get over it.
You address that in the book. You remember the very moment you learned about Ian, and also there is this feeling of inside guilt for something that may change the course of events. On the other hand, it looks from your right that Ian would have to basically stop playing live if he were to take doctor's advice, right?
Yeah, I mean, he didn't want to, though.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he was the one that fought against that more than any of us, really. I think we, you know, with hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it? You can look back and know exactly what you should have done. But when you're there in the occasion with the chemistry around you and with the, you know, the vibe that's happening, you know, it just doesn't happen. And really, Ian was the worst. Ian was really bad for Ian,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
His worst enemy.
Yeah, because he would not give in. You know, he had this group that he believed in, that he loved. He had this music he believed in and loved, that he'd worked really hard for, right from scratch. And it was just getting to fruition, and he was not going to give in to his illness. He didn't want to. He didn't want us to. I think he didn't want to. I think he felt he didn't want to let us down. He didn't want to hamper us because we had the same belief and the same love that he did. And I think he was really torn. You know, his loyalties were tested. But you know, ultimately, the saddest thing of all is that he couldn't beat it. You know, the illness beat him. And I thought there was a very telling moment in the Joy Division documentary when they took his prescription for his medicines to a modern-day epilepsy specialist and had it analysed. And the modern day specialist said that this prescription was guaranteed to kill him. This combination of uppers and downers, because they didn't really know what they were doing, it was a very experimental treatment, was guaranteed to kill him. And that was shocking, you know. I mean, you have to say that one of the great things about life is that you do learn some things as you go along. And, you know, maybe Ian's treatment wasn't in vain because it's helped refine or, you know, make a treatment better for that illness. But it was terrible to see him, you know, he really did suffer.
You mentioned that for you, closing the chapter of Joy Division at, you know, 1980 something was completely different from a public perspective. But when we see it nowadays, it was quite unique, I even say amazing, how you coped with forming new band and achieving the success. I mean, it's really, there is no comparison in the history of rock music, I think. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very difficult time, and I think that by throwing ourselves into the group New Order, we escaped the grief. And now I'm not too sure, as an older man, that was such a good idea, because I think it just delayed the grief. You never really dealt with it. You just threw yourself into something new, wholeheartedly, and it did work. But I do think, now I realise as an older statesman how important grief is, and it's a mark of respect to the person that you've lost that you need to indulge, shall we say, in it. But we didn't. We were young. We never wanted to admit to anything. We really didn't know what we were doing. We were just doing what we thought was best. But you have to say that for New Order, it worked. We managed to make New Order more successful than Joy Division. We also managed to escape the grief by filling ourselves with something else and create another new genre of music, and to be in one fantastic band that changes the world of music is good. To be in two is amazing, it really is. And I suppose, in a funny way, helping me do the Joy Division book was the thought that I might find closure at the end of it. I didn't really. I mean, suicide by anybody close to you never explains itself. It cannot explain itself, because the person who did it is not there, so that there can be no explanation. And it didn't really. The guilt that you felt before I wrote the book was still there when I finished the book. I still don't understand what drove him on that particular night to do what he did. I mean, I have a pretty good idea of the combination of events, but none of us will ever know.
If you listen to movement now, and even if you analyze what actually Martin Hannah didn't like in the later period of Joy Division, it was in a way a logical direction to go.
Yeah, right? I mean, Movement as a record is very much Joy Division music, with New Order vocals. Very tentative and very, I don't know what the word is, very humble. We were not very confident when we came to do Movement. We were emulating Ian in a way and struggling to find put our own identity on it. But I mean, I like Movement, and playing it, I must admit, as we have been doing as the light after Joy Division, has been fantastic. It's a great album to play.
A bit forgotten, perhaps.
Well, yeah, I mean, and maybe a bit ignored, because it was very much overshadowed by Power, Corruption and Lies, which was a completely different sound. We'd learned everything we could from Martin. We'd learned everything we could from Ian in his short time. And we used it to great effect on Power, Corruption and Lies. But Movement is a great record, and I enjoy listening to it, and I enjoy playing it immensely. And one of the great frustrations I had with New Order was not only the fact that you never played any Joy Division material, but also the fact that they never played any early New Order material, which I found was very sad. It was odd that we got into this particular groove, shall we say, or vein of doing the least possible to get by and concentrating on the hits that, to me, some of the hit records that we had weren't really what New Order was about. So it's nice to be able to, in England we use the term wallow, or indulge yourself in going back. But people do seem to appreciate you doing it. I've had a fantastic time playing Joy Division, and I've been very aware of the fact that Joy Division's music now has got to places that it never got to when Joy Division were alive. And I'm immensely proud of what Ian, Bernard and Stephen created. I'd like to think I do it as much justice as possible. I don't take the task of doing it lightly. I really don't, and I really do my level best to show what their input was in the best possible light. Oh, no pun intended there, light, you get that? So yeah, I mean, it's a very strange responsibility, really, because the pressure that people put on you before you started doing it, in the same way that when you came to do the book, the idea for the book came to me when I read the last book that somebody had written about Joy Division, and I thought it was rubbish. I really did. I thought, this is exactly how we would not want to be represented, and that's what gave me the inspiration to do the Joy Division book. And I must admit that I'm looking forward to Bernard's book, which is supposedly coming out in October this year, to see what he says about Joy Division, you know, because it's a comparison. My book and his book will be a big comparison, and it's strange, you know, after 30 years and being embroiled in the bitter battle that you're embroiled in now, which has turned into an absolute war between the members of New Order. It's quite easy to forget the good times because this time is bad. So I'm looking forward to maybe getting an insight, no pun intended again, to see how he felt during that period, because it wasn't something you talked about. You know, the communication between us was quite limited, really. It was all about the group and all about what you were physically doing. And I think maybe...
And then about escaping from...
Yeah, and we lost the closeness when Ian died. You know, it took a lot of innocence and a lot of naivety with it. And it was very, very difficult to deal with. But I did feel better after writing the book, but it gave me no answers. And I fully expect the same thing from the New Order book. I expect to enjoy parts of it, hate parts of it, but not really find an answer to what you did it, because mainly it's about spirit and it's about adventure and it's about excitement and it's not about sense. People who had sense probably would not put them through the things that we've put ourselves through. You know, it really was a passion for escape and a passion for music.
Famously, at the time, there was kind of discrepancy between the live sound of Joy Division and the studio.
Yeah, there's a big discrepancy between the live sound
and
and the studio.
Martin did at best the compromise between what you wanted and what he wanted.
No, he didn't. No, Martin did not compromise at all. Martin Hannett was not a compromising person. It was very difficult to get him to do what you wanted. He had the attitude that musicians were idiots and should be seen and not heard. And I must admit, after working with a few over the years, I agree.
Okay.
They are idiots. Okay. And it would be great if they were seen and not heard. Unfortunately, they are usually always the ones that want to project their voices, and rightly so. When you've written a song, you know, the idea that you know how it should sound is endemic in the writing of the song. But Martin was a character. He was a great teacher. And really, to be honest with you, the songs of Joy Division were so fantastic that you couldn't have gone wrong. Any producer would have been able to get great results out of the songs that Joy Division wrote, in the same way that the songs that New Order wrote were fantastic too. You know, we were a gift to a producer, as Martin himself said. But there was a disparity between it. Live, we were faster, we were much punkier, much more spiky. When Bernard played guitar, he didn't play keyboards. When Bernard played keyboards, he didn't play guitar. So there was a real sparseness and an edge and a very uniqueness to the sound live, but it's completely different to the record. On the record, when Bernard plays keyboards, he plays guitar. When Bernard plays guitar, there are keyboards there. So it gives you a much lusher and a much deeper sound. But really, there isn't a lot of Joy Division to compare it to. You know, there's very little live tapes of Joy Division that are fantastic, but they are different, and I was aware of that. I was aware that most people in the world had heard Joy Division on record, not live.
Yeah, that was the question. Yeah,
the idea was that when I went to celebrate the sound, celebrate the music for Ian's 30th anniversary, was to feature the sound. And I must admit, going back and listening to it was literally, there were some songs that it was the first time I'd listened to it in years. When they were remastered for the LPs and the CDs, I said I'd listened to them, but in truth I hadn't. And really, the only time I came to listen to Joy Division in depth was to celebrate Ian's 30th anniversary. And I was amazed, really, how good Martin's production was. He really was a genius. It was amazing. You know, the things that he did and the sound that he created. Very much a sound of the studio. Strawberry Studios had that signature sound that he captured and used very, very well for Joy Division. And I must admit, you know, looking back, you look back on that work now fondly, because I didn't know what to compare it to. Now I'm a producer myself. Yeah. I have a very fixed idea of how things should sound. I could not sit with a producer and let him do the things that Martin did. And I think that that would have been a great loss to the world if we had done that on Joy Division. You know, the thing I'm most delighted about is that Bernard and I didn't get our own way on Unknown Pleasures, because we would have ruined it. We really would have ruined it. And Martin did us a great favour. He gave the music the ability to last forever. The fact that you can put it on now and it takes you to a world that is wonderfully deep and rich, emotional and very, very listenable is a real gift for those records. You know, even Movement has a wonderful aura and a wonderful sound about it, for all its awkwardness and all its sort of youthfulness in the vocals. You know, that sort of naivety of learning how to do it is there, but the sound of it is great, you know. And as I say, I've been very happy with the way it stood up, playing it right next to Power, Corruption and Lies. You know, it seamlessly goes into it and seamlessly comes out of Joy Division. One thing I'd love to do in the future is play the lot. We're playing Low Life and Brotherhood this year in September, but I would love to do a concert where you start with Unknown Pleasures, play Unknown Pleasures live, play Closer live, Movement live, Power, Corruption and Lies live, Low Life and Brotherhood. I think it would be a hell of an achievement, really. You know, to put Technique on the end of it would just be wow, what a concert. To sit there would be a spectacular happening.
A couple of months back, there was a story about some Martin tapes being found by.
Yes.
What is there any, you know, footnote to it?
It's a sad story, to be honest. And what happened was that the Julia Adamson was a tape op engineer at Strawberry Studios. When Strawberry Studios went bankrupt, they should have returned all the tapes to the record companies. They didn't. They just threw them in a skip, as we say in England, threw them in the rubbish, and she took them from the rubbish. Now, she stored them for 30 years. We could say kindly, right? So anyway, then she remembers they're there, she gets them out, and we go, well, thank you, they're our tapes. And she goes, no, they're my tapes. And that's when the argument began. And it's very sad. But, you know, I mean, she's not the first person to have found a Joy Division tape and thought that they were set for life. There are many people that have found Joy Division tapes and thought, oh, this is my golden ticket, the golden Willy Wonka ticket to life. And it's not, you know, I mean, the thing is, in this day and age, you can't sell. Whatever you find, a track, or if it was, oh my God, whatever it was that you found, you can't sell it. Because once it's up on the internet, most people take it for free. It's gone. You know, the record sales just don't justify the amount of investment that you have to put into a record for anybody. So I think that, you know, the thought that you're set for life by finding these tapes is just not correct. And everybody has to adjust the reality of the recorded medium. And Julia hasn't adjusted to that yet. So she is still holding out for what she considers to be fair recompense for what she has. And our record company, for the first time actually, Warner Brothers have taken a stand and said, no, you can't do this, it belongs to the artist and you should give it back to the artist. So that's where we're at the moment. There have been a few more hiccups than that along the way, but you know, the tapes are there. We don't think that they contain much that's vastly different.
They're working tapes basically, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're copy masters with a few outtakes. You see, in the old days, the record companies couldn't afford big piles of tape. You know, I mean, if you look at New Order records like Low Life or Brotherhood or Technique, there are mountains of tapes, alternative mixes that we kept because we could afford it. In those days with Joy Division, you couldn't afford the tape. So when they did when they made a mess of a take, they just went over it with the next one. So it was always being used again. And so you don't have much alternative mixes. You know, so I mean, she has a couple, which are obviously important for that, but there isn't much of the rest of copy masters. But she also has a lot of other bands that recorded at Strawberry, and you know, I think that my opinion is that those tapes should be returned to the artist. The artist paid for them. You know, it came off my bill. I paid for it. They're mine, is how I would view it. And you know, it's just a difference of opinion, which I hope is resolved amicably. I mean, she has her ideals, and we have ours. It's just finding some way that you could overlap them. You know.
A weird question perhaps, but playing with your son now, being more or less the same age as you were in Joy.
He is the same age, yeah. He's been the same age for every LP,
Yeah.
which has been spooky.
Well, that's the question. Does it feel spooky because you realize how young you were at
Yes.
the time?
Yeah, because, you know, as an older, more experienced
Yeah, of course.
man, you look back and, I mean, you know, it's very difficult. I mean, it's amazing to think that when Joy Division started, Rob Gretton, our manager, was 23.
Yeah.
You know, I would view 23 as being a child, and yet Rob Gretton was Joy Division's manager. You know, he was negotiating multi-million pound deals with record companies all around the world at the age of 23. It's incredible. And we were 20, 21. So it is strange when you're put, but you only appreciate that when you're in that position of looking back. You know, normally people wouldn't get the opportunity to look at their son doing exactly what they did 30 years ago. That's quite a unique happening as well. But Jack was 20 when we played Unknown Pleasures. He was 21 when we did Closer, 22 when we did Movement, and 23 when we did Power, Corruption and Lies. So his age has matched those records 30 years on, and that is spooky.
Have you
When I
got any
look at-
feedback from him realizing this?
No.
no.
I mean, you know, the great thing about being young is that you think you know everything, and I enjoyed that when I was young. You know, as you get older, you realise that isn't the case, and I must say that Jack's at that position where he's happy and he thinks this is great. He shows a remarkable passion and a remarkable enthusiasm for what we did and what we do. You know, it's very frustrating to him that we're not on tour 365 days a year, but his old fella just couldn't do that. You know, I can't do that. But he's fantastically enthusiastic, and it's quite funny, we have this thing where I'll say, you're playing that slightly wrong, Jack. And he goes, no, I'm not. So, and that's the way I brought him up, to be honest, you know, to believe in himself. And, you know, I don't think Joy Division would have got anywhere near where they had with what they achieved if they hadn't have had ultimate self-belief. Being in a group is about having ultimate self-belief because you're fighting the world. You're saying to the world, you're wrong. We are great and we will prove it to you. That's what every group does. And that is a hell of an undertaking.
For an outsider, it's a fantastic story with so many twists. I mean,
Yeah.
the Joy Division, New Order, you know, transition.
Well, it hasn't finished
Now
yet, has
yeah.
it? The twists haven't finished
Yeah.
because you've
Yeah.
now got New Order at each
Yeah.
other's throats and two virtual New Orders. You've got one person playing New Order and you've got another person's playing New Order, and neither of them are New Order. I'm not New Order. I'm Peter Hook out of New Order playing New Order songs. They're not New Order. They're Bernard and Stephen, with Gillian's help, playing New Order. You know, neither of us are New Order. It is quite a weird, and obviously we're fighting over that. But I mean, that is the sad thing, you know, that has been really sad for me. The thought that they could come back and cut you out, which they did, much to my annoyance. It would have been very easy for them to come to you and say, listen, we want to start as New Order again, you know, and we want to do it amicably.
Even if
How
you
can we
say
sort
yes
it
or
out?
no, they would ask you, yeah? That's
Well, yeah. I mean, it's such a big thing for them to come back and try and go on for the years that they want to. It seems silly to me to make an enemy at the start. You know, why not try and sort it out instead of making an enemy, a big enemy? And you know, the thing is that they took something from me that I'd worked for 30 years, and the deal that they left me with is ridiculous, and in my opinion, is wrong and very, very bad, and that's what I'm fighting against. I'm fighting against the unfairness of what they've done to me, and I'm seeking a legal remedy to it. Sadly, you know, we've tried communication, it hasn't worked. They show no inkling to want to negotiate or communicate. So I was left with no alternative but to go to court, and it's been very, very difficult.
You could absolutely say that the story is worth a book, and the first chapter is out now.
Yes.
Will there be another?
There is another. I finished the New Order book
Okay.
yesterday.
Up to?
Up to 2014. up
Okay.
to the present day.
Okay.
And now I have to go through what us authors call the rewriting phase. So I've done the first draft, and then I have to, how do you do it? Polish it, edit it,
Okay.
make it work, make it interesting for a reader. So yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to finishing this one, because with this one, I am really wiping the slate clean. You know, this tells the story up till 2014, up to this present day. I finished it yesterday. So yeah, I mean, it's a hell of a tome. That's a long one. My friend Andrew Holmes, who helps me write the books, who does the analytical approach, whereas I do the personal approach, he was saying to me that it's something like 150,000 words already, and that's before you put the timelines in, the set lists, the anecdotes.
But obviously the
pictures.
timeline is so much,
Yeah,
bigger.
I mean, the reason I put the timelines in is because as a fan of groups, I love looking at them, and I love seeing the set lists, and I love hearing the little anecdotes about the gigs. You know, that's sort of important to me as a reader in what I read. I read a hell of a lot of rock books, because obviously it's my genre. I'm reading a very interesting one by Graham Nash of the Hollies at the moment, because he comes from Salford, where I'm from, and Crosby, Stills and Nash and Young, fantastic group, and my God, they argue as much as New Order, and I was so happy reading it, thinking, oh my God, it's not just me.
I don't quite know how to formulate this question, but there is something at the back of my mind that I wanted to ask all musicians that are, playing like for 40 years. Do you have the same feeling like when you see the Beatles, they actively play for 10 years, which is from today's perspective nothing. And then McCartney is playing for 40 years, living in the, in the past. Were you in this position with Joy Division? I mean, 3 years and then trying to live up to the whatever myth it was. You're still exercising the ghost from the past.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that makes you live or fall as a musician is the audience. And if the audience aren't there, then you aren't there. And the thing is that you have to appeal to people. And people come and they watch you and they think, he's done well there, I'll come back. And that's what keeps you going, I mean, you cannot underestimate the power of the people who listen to you. It's nothing to do with us. If the people didn't want to hear you, then I'd be stood there on my own. I wouldn't be able to afford to stand there, So you do have to prove yourself, and you have to earn your position and earn your worth. Someone like Paul McCartney is still at the position he's in because he's proved to people over the years that he's consistently delivered, and that's what you have to do as a musician. But the thing is that it is a little bit intangible. When I'm out walking the dog, or I'm in here dragging T-shirts in like you just saw me, I never think of the other bit, the magical bit of where you play and people love it. I feel, I'm a normal bloke. I have the problems that every normal guy has, and I take that magic, if you like, when you play, a little bit for granted because I have it. I don't understand it. I couldn't describe it, but I do know that when you play, and especially music that you yourself have written, and people appreciate it and love it, it's the best feeling in the world. Being paid to play your own music all around this wonderful world that we live in. We know there are obviously bad happenings, especially in your end at the moment, and bad happenings all around the world, but we sort of inhabit a fairy tale. I'm very lucky to still be part of that fairy tale, if you like. But it is hard work. People, I think, underestimate the work involved in it. At 58, and I'm coming up to 40 years. I've still got 2 years to go before I've been playing for 40 years, and my God, that seems like a long time. I never thought, in the summer of 76, when I picked up my first bass guitar, I would never have thought I would have lasted 40 minutes, never mind 40 years. That is an incredible amount of time. Mind-boggling, to think that you can still get away with it after that one Sex Pistols gig. I'm so glad I went that night, my God.
And for you personally, taking the Joy Division material on tour, did you have a feeling that you're taking a risk, and is it for you one of the greatest achievements that you survived with it?
No.
No.
I mean, the great achievement was writing it, you know,
Okay.
with the people that I wrote it with. I've learnt over these years since New Order reformed without me that basically any decent musician can play your songs, but the magic is the writing. You know, the chemistry involved in the people that create the music is the special thing. Joy Division were a very, very special outfit. It did surprise me the venom actually I received from Bernard and Stephen and Gillian of all people to the criticism for playing it, because
But
they
not the
played
audience.
it before me. Yeah, they
Yeah.
played it as Bad Lieutenant before I did it. So it was a bit puzzling, but I suppose, you know, until you establish a line of communication between yourselves again, you'll never understand why they were hurt or why I'm hurt that they reformed as New Order without me. You know, maybe they'll never understand that until you get that communication back again, which I must admit at the moment seems very, very unlikely. But yeah, doing it and playing it, every time that I do it and I play it and you make an audience happy and someone says to you, oh my God, you know,
It's
great
important for me, yeah,
to hear
yeah,
Auto-Suggestion again, or Decades, or The Eternal, songs that Joy Division didn't play. You know, most of Closer was not played by Joy Division because Joy Division finished before Closer came out. And so for me to hear that album, which is one of my favourite albums in the world, was a very special moment. And I'll tell you, there was a few tinklings whilst I was listening to the band play it. And it has been a wonderful achievement for me to hear that music come to life again, because no matter how friendly I was with Bernard and Stephen, even if we were great friends now, we still would not be playing that music. They don't seem to want to play that music. So it was a dream that I was never going to see while I was with them, and that's an interesting part of it. You know, I had to get rid of them to bring the dream to reality, because they didn't want to do it. You know, and when you were in New Order, they resisted it. We only played Joy Division music once at a cancer benefit in Manchester, and then we repeated it in London at Wembley as New Order, and Bernard said he didn't want to do it again because he found the music miserable. And I do understand what he meant. You know, compared to New Order's music, it's completely different. And New Order's music has been written by Bernard. The lyrics have been written by him, the vocals. It obviously feels more special and closer to him than maybe the Joy Division stuff does. I do understand that. But, you know, it was sad. And I love those songs so much. And the bass lines, the drum riffs, the guitar lines, to be able to direct my boys as I do in the light, to bring it back to life as the record, is a great indulgence for me.
It's a different story to play a one-off gig because of the celebration and anniversary. A different thing is taking the album on tour. It must have felt fantastic to see that it is important to people.
Yeah, I mean, when we played in Warsaw, in Poland, that was wild, because we used to be called Warsaw.
Yeah, of course.
And it was a fantastic reception that I never thought I'd see. You know, to play Unknown Pleasures in Warsaw, in Poland, was, whoa, I was like, yes. And it was great, because as I said before, you know, there was there's no opportunity of it to do it with Bernard and Stephen. None. I don't think they would consider it. I don't know if they've changed now. I mean, it's interesting because now New Order, the so-called New Order, actually play Joy Division songs. Because I play them, they've started playing them.
That's another twist to the story.
And you know what? A nice twist. Because the thing is, it means the audience get two bites of the cherry, if you like, and they get to hear it from both of us. They get to hear me play it majestically and them play it shit. Only joking. I'm only joking. But yeah, I mean, it is another weird twist in the tale. But yeah, it's been great. I mean, we played in Mexico of all places, and Joy Division went down an absolute storm, and the audience was so young. And to make Joy Division, to get Joy Division to Mexico, it was a hell of an achievement, you know, South America. We've literally, Bernard always used to say to me, and I never knew whether it was a criticism or a compliment. He always used to say to me, he said, "You'd play in Beirut, you." And I thought, well, I'd love to play in Beirut. Yeah, I really would. I think it's a beautiful city. It has its problems, of course, like everywhere else in the world, but, you know, it's a great part of the world, and I would. And to get Joy Division to Israel was fantastic. So, you know, there's so many places that you've been that put a lot of ghosts to bed, and also just show that, you know, Joy Division was about making positive music, great rock music, with no political
And
ideas.
realize how universal that message was.
Yeah. I mean, it's, you know, really at the time we had no idea. And I hope in my heart maybe, you know, that Ian's sat up there thinking, well, that's good. Because I think if he'd have known what Joy Division was going to mean to people, I think that could have helped him through what was obviously a very difficult period for him, you know. But you can't go back, can you? You know, you can't change the past. But, you know, celebrating it, I must admit, has given me a lot of happiness, I must admit.
Do you consider yourself lucky to start in the music when analog went into digital? Because that was a very special period.
Well, you see, I'm always analog, aren't I? Because I play.
Yeah.
You know, and the interesting thing about New Order was when New Order started to go all, well, what you consider to be digital, but basically machine-led.
Yeah.
It was me that fought against it and wanted us to stay rocky. So what we had to do to survive was have a combination of rock and dance, which gave us our unique selling point, and now is the template for nearly every band.
Yeah.
There is, you know, 99% of the bands sound like New Order, and 1% the others sound like Joy Division. I'm very lucky to have been in both, you know. But yeah, I mean, I do classic. I mean, I'm still very much analog. I'd love to play, and I hate to be tied to the drum machines and the sequencers and the samplers. I much prefer the way a band melts and interacts together and moves. And what I love about Joy Division is that you have a lot of really full bits and then it drops. We didn't do it as much in New Order. You know, we sort of got out of the habit of doing drop downs, you know, vamps, where you sort of jammed, you know, where everything was loose. That's the thing you miss. You miss the looseness and the immediacy of being able to just play. And I'm lucky, you know, I've got both. I mean, the reason we support ourselves as Joy Division when we play New Order, excuse me, the reason we support ourselves and play Joy Division when we play New Order is so that I don't lose the songs again. It's entirely selfish. I lost them for 30 years and I don't want to do it again. So when we play New Order, we support ourselves as Joy Division, play a different set every day, just to keep them fresh and to keep them going. And I must admit, I really enjoy it. I am spoilt rotten, which isn't bad to say at the ripe old age of 58.